Welcome to the Polish Podcast, where we embolden women to live out their faith in every aspect of their life, including the workplace. I'm your host, Jane Doerman, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. Before we dive in, though, hit that subscribe button to join our community of ambitious women who are committed to growing in their leadership and faith. At Polish Network, we believe your work is more than just a job. It's a calling. We're here to provide the connections you crave, the development you deserve, and the gospel that you need to thrive. Each episode of the Polish Podcast features inspiring conversations with women who are leading with faith in the workplace. Our goal is to ignite your passion and to equip you to lead with wisdom and courage. So let's jump on in to today's conversation. Well, today we're diving into a conversation that's close to the heart of our mission, which is leading the next generation with purpose and wisdom. And I couldn't have two more inspiring guests to guide us through this conversation today. Our first guest, Grant Skeldon. He's a dynamic voice for the next generation as an author, a speaker, and a podcaster. Grant's passion for discipleship has been a driving force behind his work at Think Media. His mission? To launch the next generation into their God-given purpose, equipping them with the tools and the wisdom they need to navigate the complexities of life. Joining him is his equally remarkable wife, Cheyanne Skeldon. Cheyanne is a LifePlan guide with the Patterson Group, where she leads individuals through transformative 2-day intensives designed to help them uncover their unique God-given purpose. Her work's all about helping people see the bigger picture of their lives, integrating their vocations with who they are at their core. What's truly special about Grant and Cheyanne is how their distinct callings complement each other. While they may work in different fields, their shared passion for emboldening the next generation unifies their efforts. And together, they are a powerful force guiding others to lead wisely and live out their purpose.
So what I like about what she does is it really complements a lot of what we've gotten to do together, which is really gather high capacity young Christian leaders from across the nation. And these are young leaders that kind of span across different races, different denominations, but especially an emphasis on different industries. We try to create a space for young Christian leaders that love God. They want to impact their cities, but they haven't felt called to do that through vocational ministry. They want to do that through the marketplace. And I often felt like when I was in seminary for a short bit, that felt like seminaries were training pastors for the church, but no one was training missionaries for culture. And there wasn't a place like if you were an entrepreneur or maybe a musician or a pro athlete or Olympic athlete. And so by the grace of God, we get to kind of find these leaders that are in their 20s or 30s that have really gained a lot of favor, maybe attention, maybe a lot of eyes on them, a huge responsibility at a really young age. And it could be a speaker, author, musician, pro athlete, magician, a TikToker, or someone who's a lot of reality stars. That's really where your life changes overnight because you went on the show and maybe so you think you can dance, or American Idol, or The Bachelor. It's really interesting, and it's so important for these people to have friends that aren't transactional in their life. As everyone's kind of all of a sudden coming out of the woodwork, you've got some people who are like, hey, we know you're awesome. We know you're getting a lot of attention, but this is a place where you can take your cape off. You don't have to be awesome here. You still need a place where you can get poured into because you're going to be constantly pouring out and on the road. What I like about what Cheyanne does is so often this is a generation that is wanting to be super self-aware of who they are, which is so interesting with all the tests we can take and all the things we can do, how this generation knows so much about who they are, what number they are, their spiritual gift test, or their love languages. But they still don't know a lot about who they are. Like, it seems like they know about themselves, but they're still missing direction and clarity. And what I like about LifePlan, what Cheyanne does, is it's helped these high capacity young leaders that have had this like jumpstart or this slingshot moment in their life get clarity of what's the best place to put your time. And it's not oh, well, you're an elephant, or you're a donkey, or you're a lion, or an otter, or a beaver. It's not like a set end zone. It's kind of like story based. It's everyone's got a different direction based on story. And so that's what kind of requires her to sit down and kind of tease that out and find out what are some of these turning points in your story. And so it's been really helpful for our young leaders as they're trying to navigate this new season that they're in.
The younger generation often gets labeled as lazy, directionless, entitled, sound familiar? Stereotypes that can hold them back from reaching their full potential. But Grant and Cheyanne Skeldon see beyond these labels. Through their work, they choose to embolden and encourage the next generation, helping them rise above the noise and to step confidently into their God-given purpose.
We do both have such a heart and a passion for wanting to see the next generation love and follow Jesus and do their part to reflect whatever it is God's put in them back to the world that helps point others to Him. And so for us, whether that is a retreat or a gathering, a space where we're, especially in kind of what Grant does more on the full-time basis, and I get to play a fun role in that too, but he definitely carries the weight there. And his talents as a connector and convener are definitely on full display. But creating that space for young next generation Christians who love Jesus and are trying to faithfully discern, okay, what is the direction that I'm called to go? And even if I know the direction, then it's the how. Like, what is the heart posture? What are some of the things that I need to be aware of, either from maybe it's a theological perspective and maybe it's a practical perspective of, I feel called to launch my own business and I have no idea how to do that. And so just bringing them around others who can speak into that, lock arms with them, encourage them. But then also when you do hit some of those seasons where those big life questions get loud, that's when I really enjoy getting to engage in that more in-depth conversation around, let's take a look at what God's already been doing in your life. Let's look for those important messages and insights, gain some perspective on what are the unique ways He's made you, what are the unique gifts He's put in you, and the heart that you have for the world and the people you tend to have a heart for. And we just begin to kind of string those together to get a better sense of what the invitation from God on their life might be. And so it just kind of, I think, adds more fuel to the flame, if you will, and allows them to go even more in depth in what God has called them to do as a generation collectively, but then also individually. How does that look for me?
Yeah. I wanted to kind of even ask her, because she's been doing these life plans with these high capacity young leaders. Is there something that you've noticed, as you're not just getting people that are looking for their purpose, you're getting young people that have a lot of traction, they have a lot of great directions they could go? Is there a common theme of what you're seeing in their desires or their heart, or even the common challenges they have?
Yeah, I would say it's a great question. A really common challenge I'm seeing is when you are operating in your gifting, when you are already kind of running in the lane of your calling, you can get a whole plethora of opportunities thrown your way. And it can be really hard to figure out, what is it I'm supposed to say yes to? And what is it I'm supposed to say no to? And so often where I see this really good desire almost go wrong is, I want to do it all. I believe in it all. I have such a passion for this, that they will overcommit and overextend instead of honoring our God-given limits, or recognizing like, hey, in order to really give my yes, I have to sometimes also give my no. And so helping them kind of think through, like, what are those filters? Like, how do I decide when an opportunity comes my way that I know I could do? Are there some practical ways that I can prayerfully process and discern what gets my yes and what gets my no? That seems to be really common among young leaders, is just by God's kindness, His favor, His grace, they have a lot of opportunities before them. And sometimes it can be really tempting and easy to bite off more than you can chew. And then that starts breaking things in other places as well. So just trying to get a little bit more clarity around what are those filters, and how to give the right things your yeses and say no to the right things as well.
As Cheyanne emphasizes the importance of discerning the best yes and no, Grant takes this a step further, highlighting a different challenge this generation faces: an unusual level of loneliness. It's a struggle that impacts them in a unique way, shaping their decisions and the way they engage with the world.
We've all heard the quote, leadership is lonely, and we've maybe even felt the weight of leadership being lonely. But for young leaders, it is different, especially young Christian leaders, because leadership generally does separate you from others. There's a different weight of responsibility, and even that can become a pressure, which can lead to anxiety, where you feel like, man, this is a lot on me to perform and to meet these quotas. But when you're a young leader, you kind of don't know what to do always. You're still figuring that out. You're already pioneering. And so there's an extra, and lastly, right now, there's kind of a negative connotation that generally comes with the next generation. Now, this isn't a brand new thing. I just feel like we keep getting worse and worse and more verbal with, this next generation. I am thankful that I feel like Gen Z is getting a little easier than millennials. I feel like millennials got 20 years of being made fun of and a lot of dissing. And maybe we learned in that season, hey, I don't know if this really motivates a generation to step up. I think it actually distances us and divides us. Mm-hmm. So luckily I am seeing more Xers especially that are like, oh, Gen Z, we've got to help these guys. We've got to encourage them. They're the hope of the world, or not the hope of the world, but they're a revival generation. And there's just more of a glimmer of hope, and that there's going to be good to come, even if things seem divided or dark. But yeah, if you're young and you're a leader, and lastly, if you're a Christian, that's a big one, because most of your generation has left the church. They've left the faith. I believe, and it seems like for millennials, a lot of our generation, and we grew up in the church. We grew as we got older in college, especially, and continue to get older. We've seen a lot of our friends leave the church. But for Gen Z, it seems like for a lot of them, they never grew up with a lot of Gen Z Christian friends, especially if they went to public schools. But maybe in their church they knew them, but in the world they didn't. And so it's just so important for these young Christian leaders and anyone who's really a young and a Christian for us to remember, hey, leadership is lonely. It ironically happens to be one of the most lonely generation that's ever been, one of the most anxious generations, because again, that pressure and doing it by yourself, it's not what we're designed to do. Cheyanne always points this out, and it's so helpful, is like when God said man is not meant to be alone, that wasn't saying man is not meant to be single. And I think that's for so long how we heard it, is that man is not supposed to be single, but it's that we're not supposed to do life alone. We need each other. We are better together, of course. But we have bigger vision for our life. We feel like we can keep going even when things are hard, when we have others that are with us, and they can lift our heads when we do feel down, to put our hope and our heart back in God.
Oh, my friends, we are just getting started. After the break, we'll dive into how we can build sustainable communities that nurture our faith and personal growth, the crucial role of creating and maintaining margin in our days, and so much more. So stick around. You're not going to want to miss it. Are you ready to lead more boldly in your career? Join us on October 18th in Carrollton, Texas for the Boldly Conference, where faith meets professional excellence. This isn't just another women's conference. It's a transformative event for your professional and leadership development, designed to help you integrate your faith into every aspect of your work. At Boldly, we're gathering women who are ready to grow, lead, and make an impact. Through inspiring keynotes and practical workshops and deep connections, you're going to gain tools you need to lead with confidence and purpose. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder or seeking to lead with more intention, Boldly is your opportunity to bridge the gap between the sacred and the secular, letting your faith guide you in making a lasting difference. Go ahead and mark your calendar for October 18th at Bent Tree Bible in Carrollton, Texas. Tickets are on sale now. You can secure your spot today and take the next step in your leadership journey. Visit boldlyconference.com to learn more and purchase your tickets. Don't miss out on this chance to invest in your future professionally and spiritually. Well, welcome back to the conversation as we talk about leading wisely with Grant and Cheyanne Skeldon. It's essential to recognize that discovering our purpose often involves partnership with God, and it also involves a partnership with our community. These partnerships remind us of our human limitations and the reality that we're not meant to journey through this life alone. But how do we wisely build healthy, safe communities that support our endeavors and keep us anchored in our dependence on God?
I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as Christian leaders is when we put events together, we think that the only thing we got to do and the main reason people are going to come is to teach them something. And so it's Sunday morning. Generally, it's content. At best, you get that 30 seconds to shake hands with your neighbor. I've personally never met a best friend, a good friend. Rarely do I meet him, someone I even remember through that time, but we do that time. But other than that, you're generally just seeing the back of someone's head for about 45 minutes to an hour. And that's fine. But we if we're not building community and there's not time for community, it's going to be hard when we keep talking about being a family or being a community, but we don't ever do things together. We just learn together. And, we do that in school for most of our life. We make some of our closest friends in classrooms when we're young, but it's not through just listening and watching someone teach us for the whole time. It's the times that happen in between class. It's what happens on the sports teams. It's what happens when you have people come over late at night to hang out, or a slumber party, or all these like late night. It's all the in between and after and before moments that really creates community. And that doesn't negate and or say that community and content are at odds. I just think sometimes we so hyper focus on content. So then we're thinking, oh, we need to do something for our singles, or we need to do something for our married couples, or we need to do something for whatever group, our youth. And it's like, well, then that means we need to do a Thursday night it's Bible study, or we need to do a session, or teach them on this, or teach them about singleness. And sometimes like, no, can we go to the park? Like, can we go hang out and play spike ball? There is a revival in our nation right now with pickleball. It's a multi-generational revival, multi-generational, multi-gender revival. Like, girls are killing some of the guys at pickleball. Old women are killing some of the young guys.
That's awesome.
And so I just think we got to get back to, it's funny saying this as a young person with tattoos, and maybe there's this idea that, we need to get cooler and get better worship and slicker marketing. I think sometimes we need to bring back some of the old school things like potlucks, when you used to get together afterwards and it was communal, it was rich, there was tradition there. Well, we love Sunday school. We actually want a revival coming back, doing Sunday school. We asked there was some learning, but it's in groups. You can ask questions, you can have conversations. It spurs thought, and then you talk within your group. I think a lot of those things were taken out because they seemed old school, but we're missing a lot of community when we lost that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially as we talk so much about Sunday school.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I was hearing something you didn't necessarily say that was already on my heart and mind when I heard this question from you, Jane, which is when it comes to community and being committed to it, even in the seasons where it is hard, it is tough to be a human. And one of my mentors says, we're all just hearts on sticks. And sometimes our hearts on sticks bump up against other hearts on sticks. And I was like, that is so true, even when you have the best of intentions. But I do think it's helpful to recognize a couple of things that you can do, like individually, when it comes to community, because any relationship by nature is a two-way street. It takes two to tango. By definition, community means more than just you. And so recognizing that there is a certain limitation that we all have when it comes to community, but also being willing to own what side of that is ours, where our God-given agency, where our freedom, where our ability to make choices and show up intentionally also comes into play. And what I was hearing you say but not say a moment ago, Grant, was in order for there to be room for spike ball or potlucks or hanging around after the main service for Sunday school is margin.
Yeah.
We have to have a certain level of margin in our lives. And going back to this LifePlan thing, another pattern I feel like I've seen is we eat up our margin. We don't like it. We are uncomfortable with margin in our lives. I think a lot of that has to do with our Western culture of thinking about efficiency and productivity. And if you have free time, you need to be spending it either working or learning or growing. And none of those things are bad. Those are all really, really good things to desire and intentionally chase after. And again, going back to honoring our limits as humans who are both, I love, there's a verse in Psalms that talks about how God remembers that we are but dust and we are made in the image of an almighty, all-powerful, omniscient God. And both are true at the same time. And so learning how to own and hold both of those two things next to one another and at the same time, I think is going to be really important. One of the ways that can express itself in the ways that we have the freedom to choose is protecting the margin in our lives. I believe it was an interview I listened to of Carrie Nieuwhof and Cal Newport, I believe. They were talking about this concept of slow productivity, this idea of having margin in your lives. And there was a concept shared in that conversation around you should only plan up to 75% of your day.
Oh, yeah.
Because there will be interruptions. There will be those, you get that email. It's like, oh, this is urgent. I need to respond to this, but I didn't necessarily plan on spending half an hour pulling together what my coworker needs for this deadline or for this project. Or, you get a call from your spouse or your neighbor. It's like the dog got out and, come home and get your dog. It's like those normal life things that just happen.
It happened yesterday. The cat got out. So this is very,
that's true.
You don't account for the cats getting out.
We don't account for the cats getting out. We should make that a quotable from this podcast. But
yes,
just making sure when you're looking at your day, when you're looking at your schedule, when you're looking at your week and the rhythms of your life, where is that margin? Because that is where those water cooler conversations happen. We see it in the workplace. We see it in school. As you're growing up, it's the recess, it's the time between classes. And those in-between spaces can be very mundane. And sometimes they're also really sacred. And so just being intentional to create and protect that space for margin in our lives for community to show up. If a friend gets sick, it's, okay, well, I've got time this week to bring a meal over or to run by CVS and pick up your medicine for you or to bring you some fresh flowers just to cheer you up. And I think those things in this very hyper speed, hyper productivity world, those things really stand out and go a long ways, I think, when it comes to building and engaging in thoughtful community.
No, that's really good, Cheyanne. Like, you were speaking to me there, the 75% of your day. I'm like, you know what? I would be a lot less anxious. I'm married. I have 3 kids at home, 11 to 4. And kids have a way of complicating your life. I know you got the cat, I got the kids, and it's just we're all living complicated lives here. And I hear you with the margin thing, and I'm wondering if we can camp on this for a second. If you can help us with this, because I'm thinking of the listener listening, and maybe I'm thinking of myself too, who's like, okay, 75%. Like, how guide us to how we get there. Because what if we're already living in this hyper speed, filled up days, if you will, like there's a lot of wisdom there. And I'm curious if you could maybe guys, like how can we maybe proactively start creating more margin in our days?
That's a great question. I have some really practical thoughts, but curious what you're thinking too.
Some practical ones too. Maybe I'll share mine and then you jump on it if you're cool with that.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's some practical thoughts that came to mind immediately is I think the problem is we generally as humans always prioritize work, and we will make we'll never often break the rules to prioritize something else. It's like that's a non-negotiable thing is work. And so part of that is a deeper message of how do we make our relationship with God and our family it gets our first fruits, and work gets our second. Not to say that second is bad fruit, it's just kind of saving that for the family first, and then giving the rest. And how it plays itself out, for example, this is such a practical thing, but this is how I know people generally prioritize work is where you can create margin is so random, but we live in Nashville, and every week we're talking to someone who's moving here to this city. And I can't tell you how often they're like, oh, I want to move over to this one part of town. It's usually near their work. And, but sometimes it's not near any of their friends. And I'll tell them, look, I know it's closer to your work and that's a 5-minute drive, but no one lives over there. And I think often we tend to want to live near our work. And I would say live near your friends. And even if that means you got to regularly make the drive to work, because we prioritize work no matter what. Like, we'll never wake up in the morning and be like, I'm just not going to drive in. But often we'll lose that margin for friends because we will get off of work and then we'll be tired because we didn't have margin, because we gave our all to work. And then we're like, oh, I know I said I was going to be there at 7, but it's a long drive to get to my friends and I'm tired. And so we will often cancel on our friends, even though we'll never and cannot cancel on work. And so I feel like that's a great hack. I've seen a lot of people choose work and nearness to work over friends, and they'll move to a new city and do that. And then they move out in a year or two because they feel like, oh, I just was never connected with people. And it's because of what you prioritize on a very practical level. Just even for us in our marriage, like one of the best things my mentor ever did, where I started seeing, okay, this is showing priority, is this was a message he shared with me without words, but I've never forgotten, is him going to his house, and we had worked all Wednesday. He was a youth pastor. And then at night he was going to dinner, and he kind of said something to me where he said, hey, I'm about to go inside with my wife and kids. And I know we're tired. It's been a long day. You've been following me and helping me all day. And he said, but I've saved energy for my family, and because they're my first ministry. And everything we just did, which I thought everything we just did was, it was hundreds, almost 1,000 young people. I thought that was the big deal. That was the big thing in his life. And for him to, as things got quieter, the calm after the storm, and us taking the drive, going to his family. And I was like, man, that's a whole different scorecard than what I probably thought. And hearing that at a young age, but I think I've now seen it not done that way often, where it's like, I've found my identity in my work, and I give it gets priority, non-negotiable, even if that means family, and especially if that means community.
Yeah.
What did you add?
That's really good. I think even looking from that perspective, our ideas are very complementary, which makes me happy and excited. But as you're looking at, okay, how do I create margin in my life? One of the conversations and exercises that I will take a vast majority of my LifePlan clients through is doing a time audit. Quite literally pulling out your calendar, looking at your last at least 3 to 4 weeks. If we've got time, I encourage them to look at the last 3 months. And on average, just literally do the math. If you were to parse life out into those 5 different areas we talked about earlier, personal, being anything around your own physical, emotional, intellectual, or spiritual health, your own relationship with God, what amount of time are you spending in that? Whether that's going to the gym, quiet times in the morning, walks out in nature. Maybe it's, doing something that brings you life, that sort of replenishes you in one of those kind of 4 personal arenas. Your family would be the second domain. So if you're married, your spouse. If you have kids, your kids. If not, then your immediate family. Who would you consider to be family when we're thinking through that domain? How much time are you spending with them a week intentionally? Not accidental, where the TV's on, but we're on the laptop and we're still hammering out the work project. Doing the same thing for work. Yes, your hours in office, but are you responding to emails over the weekend, or does your job require you to travel or work nights? Or, maybe that just has some variation for wherever you're at. Your faith community, if you're plugged into a local church or any local ministries, how are you showing up and serving there intentionally, or engaging intentionally? Maybe it's a Bible study you're a part of. Maybe it's a book club where you're all reading, a book that's designed to help you grow and mature spiritually alongside others. Like, how much time are you spending with your faith community? And then the 5th area would be community at large. So this is having guests over, grill out with the neighbors. Maybe it's going and doing a CrossFit class because this particular gym has become, some of your community there where you live locally. and quite literally just doing the math. Okay, on average, this is how many intentional hours I'm spending in each of these domains. And then just looking at that, even breaking it down if you can into, okay, what percentage of my time is that? We've only got about 12 hours of intentional time a day to spend. So when you do the math on that, do some contrasting, do some comparative analysis, pay attention to the big questions or pain points you're feeling like, man, I don't feel like I've got a lot of margin. Well, once you do the time audit, it may make sense. And then you can, again, tapping into that God-given agency, that free will that I'm rereading Dallas Willard's Divine Conspiracy right now. And he talks in it about how when God talks about kingdoms, he gave each of us our own kingdom. And our own little kingdom, small k there, our own little kingdom, our own little dominion is ourselves, our choices, our thoughts, our decisions, how we spend our time, how we spend our energy. And he's given us freedom and leadership and dominion over that. And so just being the author of your own life, being a little bit more proactive. It's not perfect. Like I feel like I revisit this myself and I'm the one preaching it like at least every other week, if not on a weekly basis, and looking at my calendar and saying what needs to be cut. Running it through some of those filters that I have for myself of, if I know this is how God wired me, these are the talents he's given me, what are the best ways I can steward those so that it brings life and benefit to the world and the people around me and leads to life to the fullest for myself also. So that's just one practical way to think about, okay, how can I assess where my time is currently going and how can I begin to make some changes there? If you're a calendar user, you can quite literally go in and put blocks on your calendar of, hey, this is my block for work. This is my block for time with family. This is a block for, when we're at church or doing a serve event or, we've got spike ball on a lot of Saturday mornings with our friends. And for me, there's a block there. And you can just quite literally begin to see and evoke some personal agency over, okay, where am I investing my time? And do I have the margin that I know I want to create and know I need in order to be the kind of leader, the kind of friend, the kind of mom, wife, husband, coworker that I want to be.
Yeah. I appreciate both of you for sharing those practical, ideas or steps into, protecting our margin. And this theme keeps coming up in a lot of conversations I've been having, just this whole idea of just being so self-aware as a leader. Like that, I feel like really good leadership starts with that self-awareness of what are my priorities, do a time audit, realize like, hey, maybe you aren't honoring the priorities that you say that you have type thing. And where where do we need to work that out? And so I think that's something we can all take with us for sure, and as part of this self-awareness piece of really, 75%, only schedule 75% each day, which like, again, you're speaking to me here. I'm going to put this into action here because I do feel that stress and I am realizing, and maybe summer's just highlighting it more because my kids are home, most of the, every day. And, and it's the interruption and honestly, like I can get frustrated or angry and it's like, wait, I'm not really angry at them. I'm angry that I didn't prioritize my time well. Right. And so I think I know I'm not the only one who struggles with that. And I appreciate both of you sharing that. And what I have loved about this whole conversation is just how, like you've said it, Cheyanne, how complementary you both are to one another. And I just, as a husband and wife team, I think this is such a great example of what like a kingdom-minded marriage could look like. My husband, and I would say, supports me a lot in the work that I do. And I find our roles here in our community very complementary as well. So it's really cool to see both of you, just doing your thing, and supporting one another and engaging one another. My question, as being a husband and wife team with this shared mission, but different vocations, how do you empower each other and promote unity in the work that you both do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. And we every year I feel like we're kind of navigating that in a new season.
Sure.
It's definitely one of those things, like you said, where you gotta continue to preach it to yourself, check in with good community. Real quick, I did want to say too, her stuff on margin, and you even re-quoting that the 75% thing, it got me thinking about just the idea of only scheduling 75%. Often if we schedule 100%, that's with the hopes, the crossing our fingers that everything's going to go perfect. We're not going to get interrupted. There's not going to be any problems. Nothing's going to change. And when those things do change, because it will happen and life does happen, then you kind of mentioned how, we can take our frustration out on the people that interrupted us. Or I had a mentor, he used to say, people often will try to give you their monkey. And it's always visually helped me. It's like, I don't want your monkey, dude.
It's not
you
my
keep
monkey.
your monkey. But people,
That's hilarious.
A lot of work is, hey, I got this monkey. Can you help me with this monkey? It's like, can you take this monkey?
Yeah.
And those things are just going to happen, especially with kids. Yes, is marriage ideally is a give and take relationship. Kids is for 18 years, maybe even plus. It seems to be a lot of give. And so they're gonna interrupt. And I just say all that to say, I was just thinking about Jesus and how interruptible Jesus was. In fact, most of the New Testament and the stories we know about Jesus were not strategic encounters, it seems like, by him, where he started the conversation. It seems like he was interrupted. It just seems like the grand majority of it is he was a very interruptible person. And so he had the margin and the capacity to do that. And I think lastly of the story of him in the morning, getting away, and the disciples can't even find him. They finally find him. And there's that moment where they say, Jesus, come on. And they say a line, everyone is looking for you. And that's a really big thing that actually, I think if you really think about it, young people, young Christians, people with good intentions that want to impact people, they want to help people, they want to make a difference with their life, to hear someone rushing in saying, we've been looking everywhere for you and everyone is looking for you. Like everyone could use your help, basically. Yeah. Generally, we'd be like, all right, let's go. Or that's adrenaline to me. Like I'm designed for this. And that didn't seem to bother him. In fact, he goes on to another place. And it kind of shows, what we can do is right away, we don't get away with the Father. We get on social media and we're kind of wondering, what is everyone thinking about me? Is everyone looking for me? And it can be the wrong source, the wrong question. And instead, Jesus, is super solid and structured in the beginning so that he could do the rest of the day and be interruptible. And even lastly, I thought of the Good Samaritan. It's really a story of, are you interruptible? Because that's what the Good Samaritan was. He wasn't just interruptible. He was like, I have margin to go above and beyond in how I've been interrupted. And he's so set apart from all those other people that didn't have bad intentions or bad excuses. They just didn't. They were not able to be interrupted by the problems of that person on the road.
That's so good. That's so good.
That is really good. Yeah.
I don't know your question. I just know I got to take care of that. Here's actually what I think. I do remember your question now is how do we kind of work together? And we haven't talked about this yet. And there's something we recently learned from Carrie Newhoff that we maybe quote every day. And so it seems like it might be the rest of our life, but it's been that helpful. But it is probably only 3 weeks in. But would you mind explaining the green zone, red zone, yellow zone?
Yeah.
Because that's really helped as sometimes we get to do some of the same things together. But even no matter what, as we're working in the same house, more than ever, people are having they're co-working in their home where they get to work from home. And I've met a lot of wives that are like, oh, no, I love when my husband is gone and get him out of this house. And we're in the middle of it is hard because it's like sometimes someone's like, I'm always the one when I work from home, like, okay, do you want to go to breakfast? Oh, no, it's like, do you want to go to lunch together? It's like, she almost never wants to go with me to things. I'm like, and it's like, all right, let's go on a walk. At least we need a 15-minute break. And she's so focused. There's just different work paces, priorities, different meetings going on at different times. And this concept has helped us just know, hey, I'm in this space right now, but I will soon be here.
Yeah.
But, maybe explain that to everyone.
Yeah. So it comes from Carey Nieuwhof's own personal journey and story, which was, I believe, when he was in his early 40s, hit a really bad bout of burnout. Try saying that fast 3 times. Really bad bout of burnout. And he came to realize, this actually pairs really greatly with the conversation we were just having around time and margin, is he began to realize, like, my energy is depleted. Like, I am just spread so thin. And so he, in this burnout season, and as he began to come out of that, recover, change some of the rhythms, some of the ways that he was spending his time and his energy, he began to realize this pattern for himself around, there seem to be certain times of the day where I have like really strong energy. Like, it's really easy for me to focus, go heads down, to just grind and knock the things out that I need to knock out, those most important things that pertain to my particular job. Then he also realized, and on the flip side of that coin, I also have certain times of the day where I am just no good for anything. I am exhausted. For me, that I call that the 3 o'clock slump. It happens every day at 3 o'clock. I don't even have to look at at my watch to know that it is 3 or 3:30, because it is like the pit for me. And that's where your energy is just like, it's really low. And he said, and everywhere else is yellow. So you've got these green zones of high energy. You're just naturally, that's kind of a peak time for you. He also explains that you've got a red zone. We've got these places where we just naturally, that's kind of a dip in the day for us, and a yellow zone. And as he realized this for himself, began to realize, this isn't just true for me. This seems to be very true for people across the board. And so he wrote a brilliant book called At Your Best, where he kind of breaks these down and talks a little bit more about them. But he really encourages folks to look at their own daily clock, if you will, your own internal wiring and the way that you kind of naturally operate, and identify what those green zones are. Here he says that we've got about 3 to 5 hours of really good, deep, productive work in us a day. Those are our green zones. The red zones, those places where it's like, I'm bottomed out, no good for anything. And that's where you want to maybe break and go for a walk, or maybe it's take a 20-minute power nap if you're able, or maybe that's when you turn in that reimbursement form that you've been sitting on for a minute, because it's kind of mindless and it's not going to take that much energy. You just need to get it done. And then yellow zone is everywhere in between. And so whatever it is that your unique role and position in the marketplace at work is, do your most important work during the green zone. Do work that is not going to break anything in your red zone, or take some rest. Go for a walk, move your body, let your body just kind of take a breather. And then the yellow zone, do everything else. So that may be, if meetings aren't a key part of your like, that is the thing I have to do and it's really important, do it during a yellow zone. If it's maybe filling out a report or doing some other sort of activity, like that's what you put in those yellow zones. And so for us, after we learned from this concept through Carey, we actually mapped, Grant and I did ours out side by side. And we said, okay, if this is what a day looks like, we've got a column for Cheyanne, we've got a column for Grant.
Kind of like 6 a.m., 5 a.m. till like 12 at night.
12 p.m.
Oh,
where
wow.
Are your green
Okay.
areas, where are your yellow areas, where are your red?
Yeah, because for spouses, it's not like we only interact with each other in those 8 to 5 hours. It's like we've got the mornings, we've got the evenings. And so whether it's with your spouse or with your team, whatever that is, it's like identifying like, okay, where are your natural green zones and where are mine? Is there any overlap? Let's also pay really good attention to those red zones. Man, like I'm in yellow. I'm still cranking while he has his big red zone. And so just being aware of that. But then when I'm winding down at night, he's gearing back up for his second green zone of the day. This man has 2 green zones. I'm very jealous of that. Early in the morning and late at night. So,
and I think that is a common, again, not every guy and every girl is the same, but there's a lot of guys I know that's like, man, my wife, wants to go to sleep at this time. that's kind of when I get creative.
Get a second wind.
Yeah, I get a second wind. But
Yeah.
I've seen this play out a lot with us, even the last 2 or 3 days. Yesterday, Jane will let you know, you're our counselor for 3 minutes. We had to do something that wasn't my work and it wasn't her work, but it was something we decided to do that required work.
A passion project.
It was like a
Yeah.
passion
cool.
project,
Yeah.
but we have been not finding the time and having the margin to really do it. And so I scheduled it and I was like, let's just do it at 5 p.m. till 6:30 yesterday, basically. And I would say you seem like you're in your yellow zone.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I was in my yellow zone for sure.
I didn't think about this until I realized, I was like totally in my red zone and I just didn't want to do it at all. And I was like, so what that looks like, it's funny now, but it's like I'm shorter fuse. I am not that motivated. You can kind of bump into each other. Things offend you more or you got less patience for. And so I just like, I really don't think I can do it actually right now. And later as I processed it, I was like, hey, I in the future don't think I'll ever try to plan us to do collaborated projects, especially meetings at that time. Like that's probably when I should, because generally what we've done in that time is like go on a walk,
Right.
and it's more like heart talk and not work talk.
Right.
And so that was one of the, but it was the only time because I had to go to something at night. She had to go to something. So it was like, this is the window, but it really gave us, hey, it's not that I'm just trying to be mean. I just, let's in the future, let's make sure I'm at my best and you're at your best, or at least in a yellow than in a red. And then, even just when we do work in the office or in our house at the same time, there's times when I'm like, hey, let's go do this. Or do you want to talk about this or think about this? And she's like, hey, I'm in my green zone. I got an hour left and 2 hours left. Anything after that, it'd be perfect to do something like that. But I just want to keep going. And I think in the past, we'd be like, oh, you're my husband or you're my wife. I want to do that. And it makes it's not personal. It's just, I want to be at my best for both of these. And it's really given helpful language and structure for co-working together and collaborating together.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, and you touched on this, but that shared language even of, it's not personal. I've got an hour left of my green zone and he knows exactly what that means of like, oh yeah, go do your thing. We'll reconnect once you're teetering back into yellow, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and finding that rhythm together and cheering for each other in that too. Like Grant really is one of my biggest cheerleaders, and wants to champion the call that God has on my life and how that shows up specifically in my vocational outputs. And I want the same thing for him. And so I've gotten to where it's like, well, I'm headed to bed, but like, you're going to stay up and like work on, your new book, or you're going to work on, this sermon that you're getting ready to preach on Sunday or whatever it may be. And it's like, oh no, like that makes sense. Maybe some nights we go to bed at the same time, but maybe other nights, like, go do your thing. Like, I know that this is when you have got really good energy and I want you to steward that well, with the call that God's got on your life. What's up?
I'm thinking of the other, so that's nighttime in the morning. So she wakes up red zone.
Yes.
Just like, hey, don't
talk to me.
And
so that's my coffee.
And for generations, what we've said is I'm not a morning person, but it's like, I am in my red zone probably in the morning. And I wake up generally to my green zone. Like that's some of my best work. And so it just helps know I was like, I'm not going to talk to her much in this time. Like, and she's going to get with Jesus. Like that's her time, of course, to like study. Yeah. But just again, it takes the personal out of it and just like, okay, it doesn't mean, just like any of these personality tests is like, this gets to be my excuse on why I get to always do what works only for me.
Sure. Right.
So it's always got to find the win-win.
Right.
But at least there's a grace now that's given and an understanding and a structure kind of that's there to help each other out. Yeah.
Because there's this, we work together in like a vocational component, but then like it helps us work together. Like work is in we're not butting heads maybe as much as we would. And there is a little bit more of that grace and just kind of common understanding. On the other side of that work, or that we were just using. It's been really fun to, as God's brought more clarity to Grant on his unique calling and purpose and what that looks like in the season. And the Lord's been really kind to do the same thing for me. It's been fun to almost look at those two things. I was just telling somebody earlier this week about this. They're navigating a very similar chapter of life where they're like, we feel called to similar things, but we also have our own things. So how do you and Grant navigate this? We're just talking with some friends. And I said, well, it's once you're able to get really clear on what that unique calling and season and how what's the vehicle for the calling across all the domains, because we tend to think about that only with work, but our spouse is included in that because family. What do those things look like? And then once you're clear on both of those things, where's the natural overlap? Like how are those, and to what degree are those circles? What's the word I'm looking for? Concentric circles there. And finding those areas of like, man, while we both have this shared passion for next gen leaders, like God has been writing that and making that abundantly clear in both of our stories long before we ever even met each other. Okay, so our work together probably needs to be around and for next gen leaders. And okay, well, you're wired as a connector and a convener, someone with a passion around unity. I am wired as I want to go deep. I'm very much like a shepherd's heart. I want to identify what are the patterns and the insights and what are the messages moving forward. Like, how do we understand the past in order to step into the future really intentionally, and recognizing, like, oh, those aren't the same thing, but they are complementary. Because if Grant, you're helping through your talents that God's given you, operating in your calling, if you're doing what you're made to do and bringing people together, creating a space and a heart around unity and connection, well, when someone hits a dark night of the soul or a wall or begins asking really big questions or at a vocational crosshair of like, I feel like a big change for me career-wise is coming up, but I'm not sure if I'm supposed to go right or supposed to go left. And then I get to kind of step in with my unique gifts and say, okay, like, let's pay attention to what God's already been up to in your life. And let's look at these different components. Let me walk you through this process. And together we'll see if we can discern what the invitation is for you in the season. And I could never do what Grant does. I'm not wired that way. And I don't think he would enjoy at all doing what I do. He's not wired that way. But finding those, okay, these things complement, they don't compete.
Yeah.
And so how do we engage in those things all the way from, what are our core values? He has his, I have mine, and then we have shared ones. And the ones we don't share, just honoring and respecting where the other lands, knowing that's part of how they were uniquely made. Whether that's, the red zones and the yellow and the green zones we were just talking about, recognizing, okay, this is kind of your unique way. So when we work together, this is the time slot that we should be aiming for, because it allows each of us to show up with our best energy and be able to put our best foot forward, and just trying to identify what are those areas of overlap and honing in on those in complementary ways, but also owning the areas that you're different too, and not shying away from that or backing down, and trying as much as you can to be intentional and supporting each other in that, I think has been fun. And we've definitely failed forward in this a lot. We're definitely still very much figuring it out. It's a day by day, and different seasons require kind of different re-upping and taking a look at it again. But it's been really fun, really purposeful and meaningful.
Before we hit pause, get ready for a fun twist in our next segment. You know what's coming next. Ask Me Anything. And we've got a special question curator on deck. She's a poet with a knack for the profound and a heart that's been through quite a journey. So stay tuned for some insightful and playful questions coming your way. Don't miss it. Are you a working woman looking to elevate your leadership this year? Polished Collaboratories could be your next right step in moving forward in your leadership development. Polished Collaboratories are small groups modeled after executive peer groups, yet available to working women at all levels of leadership. Collaboratory members dive into leadership training with a faith-forward perspective for 12 months. This is your opportunity to tap into diverse perspectives, conquer challenges, and achieve your goals in a united sisterhood. New groups are launching in 2024. We want you to be a part of it. So go to polishednetwork.org/collaboratories to learn more. Well, welcome back, friends, to the Polished Podcast. We hope you are enjoying this insightful discussion with today's guests, Grant and Cheyanne Skeldon. But now it's time to add a splash of spontaneity and a sprinkle of fun to the show. It's time for Ask Me Anything. So Grant and Cheyanne, here is how Ask Me Anything works. We're about to uncover the people behind the profession, the quirks behind your expertise. I have received 3 questions from one of our previous podcast guests, and your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to answer these questions so we can have a deeper insight into who you are. Are you both game for this challenge?
I'm ready. Bring it on.
You guys are going to be able to handle it. A lot of podcast guests come on and they're like, I'm really nervous about this. And I'm like, I promise you can handle it. It's fine.
I'm excited. You're going to be curious now, Jane. Not sure where we're going, but I'm on for the roller coaster ride. Let's do it.
Oh my gosh. Well, maybe I overhyped it, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway. Today's questions were curated by Deborah Grandison. She is going to be an episode for December. I believe this episode airs in September. Anyway, so she's going to be a December episode, but she is the owner and founder of She Speaks from a Joyful Heart, LLC. She's a patient advocate for those who are struggling with heart disease. She is a wonderful woman. Like I just am so encouraged by the work that she does. She's a poet, she's a writer, she's a speaker, all the things. So to kick things off, her first question.
Having a leadership role puts you in a position of working with a lot of different personalities. How do you prepare for a difficult conversation with a negative person?
That really is such a great question. And I think anytime that I'm trying to intentionally engage with someone who maybe has that tendency to be a bit more cynical, critical, negative, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And this has been a lot of, again, failing forward over the last 10 plus years of different roles and leadership and then just in life, I think. But what I've found helpful for me is trying to appreciate what they may be trying to say. Like trying to look past the tone and pay attention to, okay, what is the heart? What is the central thing that they're trying to communicate? Because maybe they're seeing something that's important for me to be aware of. For example, if I'm bringing this idea of a project and I feel really excited and I'm bringing it to a coworker for their feedback and they kind of tear it to shreds, like that could leave me feeling really deflated and discouraged and kind of frustrated because why didn't you think my idea was great? It's my idea. Of course right. It's great. How dare you not agree with me? But trying to parse out where I can the value in what there may be poking holes at. Because it's very rare that I'm ever going to come up with anything, especially if I'm bringing the proposal and I'm the only one who's thought about or noodled on it so far. They may have a really valuable perspective. Their delivery may be a little challenging, but the thing that they're delivering, that core thing, could I pick that up out of it? I remember, it's funny, we were talking about this, Jane. I was having a conversation with Jesus about this one day because I was feeling kind of frustrated. And there was this image that kind of came to my mind. He was like, imagine if you were in a mountain, you're mining and you're, deep within the deep pits of the mountain, if you will. Because again, there are those mine carts that, come in and out. I feel like all roller coaster, like Six Flags-esque places have some sort of mini mine train, so you're you've got these mine trains coming in. He was like, you may not like the vehicle that this message is coming in on. You may not like the mine cart, but that's okay. The mine cart isn't what's important. What is inside that mine cart that you could just pick up, take out, and then let the cart move on by. And I think it's like when we're able to take apart those important, okay, I'm not even going to pick up all of that. Maybe not all of that's helpful, but maybe there are a couple of gold nuggets or gemstones that actually is helpful and that actually is valuable for me to think through that. Thanks for that perspective. I appreciate your insight on this. And even just trying to engage them in a way that does affirm that. Again, it's not always the easiest thing, but I think just validating like, okay, I see that you do have a a point of view here, and I want you to know I see it, and I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. Maybe asking a follow-up question, but trying to kind of listen to the thing behind the thing when you can. Seek to understand, like, what is it that they may be actually trying to communicate. Giving grace. Maybe it's their red zone. Maybe I just caught them at a bad time, or they're having a bad day. But just trying to extend grace where you can, and then just shaking it off, and literally just kind of dusting it off your shoulders, moving on to the next thing, and not letting that thing stick with you, are all at least helpful thoughts and practices to grow in. They're like exercises. I think we could all use some strength and conditioning around them. None of us have ever fully arrived, but I do think those can be some helpful exercises in trying to grow those muscles.
Grant, if you have something to add, I would love it.
Yeah. I mean, I like what she said. I do feel like we've got to try to hear what the other person is saying, but that is unfortunately almost unnatural, which is very bad for relationships, is because the main focus is to make sure they hear what I'm trying to say. And we of course see this in marriage. We got the privilege to be with Emerson Eggerichs recently, who wrote Love and Respect, and he was kind of talking to both of us, and he said something about, most times it's good intentioned people, but they're so focused on like, hey, hear what I'm saying. And they're like, they got good intentions too, but they're saying, but hear what I'm saying. And then the other person's like, but hear what I'm saying. And it's just a lot of going back and forth. Of, but hear what I'm saying. I don't feel like you're hearing what I'm saying. And so why there's probably kind of conflicts that you keep stepping on over and over and over again. Cause it's like, hey, they could, you just trying to make sure they hear what you said. And so really us trying to repeat, this is what I hear you saying. And this is what he would say, like, look for all the good can, affirm all the good you can. Like, here's the good I see. Billy Graham had a quote, something to the effect of allow every critic to potentially become a coach. And it's not that every critic gets full right and everything they say is right to your heart and to your mind. But the opposite isn't correct either, to just silence any type of criticism, any type of negativity. You're missing out on what could be helpful coaching and feedback. And so having the stability and security to receive some critique and negativity. And sometimes I would say, we were just talking about this, is sometimes negativity is a sign that they care too, especially if it's within a business, an organization. I kind of like sometimes when someone, as long as they are negative and then they bring a solution. I often say to young people, you can't critique unless you create. If you just critique, that's problematic. Like, if I just wanted to listen to people's critiques, I'd go watch movies a lot, because every commercial, you're going to hear a lot of people that have never made a movie, a commercial, or nothing tell you about how a movie is good or isn't going to be good or all bad, and they've never directed anything. You get a lot of critiques when you're watching the commercials. I'm looking for people that actually, I saw this, I like this, I think we could do this, like giving some type of plan. And then lastly, that on a practical sense, I think that's very helpful. On a heart posture, probably the most helpful thing for me is if I really have tension with someone, it's funny that they become a part of this list, but they really join my prayer list. And I try to pray sincere prayers that I would want, like, my dad to pray for me, or my mom to pray for me, because a mom and a dad really knows your story, and they really think about, hey, I know they're expressing themselves in this way that's negative, or they're doing this or doing that, but I also know where that's coming from, and there's some hurt that's creating that, and they pray for the deeper thing behind the thing, or like the underbelly problems, and trying to pray, if I was in his shoes or I was in her shoes, just God, can you heal some of that or help some of that? And it gives me grace generally for that person. The more I pray for them, I actually think it was a trick by God when he asked us to pray for our enemies. And I say that facetiously, but he wasn't trying to give us a formula on how to help our enemies get better. He was trying to get us better, because the more I've prayed for anyone who is an enemy of me or I have tension with, the more my heart has softened towards them. Leonard Ravenhill has a quote, something to the effect of how he's never continued to pray for someone who he's continued to dislike. Usually the more you pray for someone, the more you like that person, or at least have a compassion and a grace for that person. And so that I think helps also when you're going in. You're like, hey, I've really tried to think about what it's like in your shoes. I'm trying to hear what you're saying. And also, I want you to hear what I'm saying too.
I love that. Fantastic answers, both of you. I love it. I love it. I love it. Deborah's second question is,
when you need a little dose of encouragement and nobody else is around, what do you do to encourage yourself?
Oh, I like this question. I cuddle with my cats.
I love that.
But for real, I do think for me, nature, whether that's in the form of our two very sweet fur babies, or just taking a step outside, getting some fresh air, being around things that do not require me to grow. A lot of times my discouragement can be rooted in my lack of ability to make things happen, or things going the way I want them to, or this just didn't play out the way that I had just even hoped. And so getting out and just remembering like, okay, that is real. And there's also this truth out there that not everything requires me. Like all of these trees out here, this grass, this beautiful nature I'm around, it required nothing of me, and it is being fully tended to. And, that just tends to kind of encourage my personal spirit and lift my head a bit when I'm feeling a bit down in the dumps, and usually, quite frankly, sorry for myself. So,
no, I love it. I love it. What about you, Grant?
It's good. I don't know if I have good answers on that one. I think because I do think I have good things that work for me. I think, but I feel like getting encouraged is such a, there's certain things about our relationship with God that's so personal. I wish someone would kind of do a study on that. Like certain people connect with outside of the word and prayer, which is generally what people say when you have a problem. It's like, you got this problem, you should get in the word, or let us pray. And those things are some of the most powerful things for sure you can do. There are these, I don't know if they're extracurricular ways to connect with God that it doesn't work for everyone. Like for me, the mountains is not the most connective place where I've seen people in awe of God. While for me, being in the city actually really gets my heart on fire for God and for people and his mission. And so I would say, nature, going on a walk does that. Lately, as I think I'm getting older, maybe listening and not even praying to God, in the sense that I'm doing more listening prayers. Probably the verse that's always helped me no matter what season is Ephesians 4:1, walk in a manner worthy of the calling in which you've been called. And that verse usually is very helpful in resetting, because no matter how discouraged I am, I usually am like, am I trying to, or can I at least walk in the manner worthy of what he's called me to do? Because we get discouraged a lot, usually through comparison. It's we're looking at other friends who are running in their calling, and they're doing all this other stuff, and or where we wish we could be or we thought we would be. But I usually just, if I'm like, hey, if that's what God wants me to do, is just simply walk in a manner. It's not even a hard call. It's just simply walk. And so that's usually helped me feel like, okay, I'm doing what the person who's most important to me, the person who's never left me, the person who will always be there, the person who knows the most about me and still loves me. I'm doing what he wants of me. And that's very sobering, and allows me to kind of go back into, it's almost like I think of a George Bailey almost kind of moment. If you know It's a Wonderful Life, this guy goes back to all the same problems that he had before, but that dude has a different spirit and a different posture and attitude about it. In fact, he's going back to going to jail. That is what he's going back to, and he's happy about it, because it really shows, and we know experience this, where you can talk to God, or really he talks to you, and you go back to the same circumstances that you were praying for him to help you out of, but you're able to go back to it with a different spirit. And that's been most frequent for me, where I get encouraged.
Yeah, that's really good and very true. You do that a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, my final question for you, and this is more of like a trivia question. It'll be interesting. I think you can handle it, but Deborah's episode is about leading joyfully. Okay. So she was really leading into this idea of joy with this. So she says,
there are 9 fruits of the Spirit. One is joy. Can you name the others?
Yes. This is like early growing up in church, the songs that we would sing and things we would
Yep,
learn.
Exactly.
I can't, but I
I was curious if you knew the song.
I got saved before the songs. I mean, after the songs. Sorry,
Yeah, you got saved at 16. That was kind of past the kindergarten.
Oh,
tunes.
you're one of those stories. Got it. No.
It's beautiful.
But yeah.
Yes, it is.
I know you got. Yeah, go ahead.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control.
Oh, I knew it then. Actually, yeah. Love, joy,
Yes.
love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, self-control. I think that and faithfulness.
There you go. You guys, you win. You get the gold star.
Yes.
Good job.
Love it.
Well, Grant and Cheyanne, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And here's the thing, friends, we want you to join the conversation too. Do you have a question or a curiosity about leadership or our guests? Now's your chance to be part of the action. Go to our website at polishnetwork.org to submit your questions today. Become a Polish Podcast MVP and get a mention plus insight into your favorite guests. Send in those questions today. How can our listeners actively contribute to empowering the next generation of leaders? What role can they play in fostering clarity, community, coaching, discipleship for younger individuals?
I got something.
Yeah,
that
go
comes to
ahead.
mind. There's something on my heart a lot these last couple years, and about how to kind of help the next generation. And it's such a big challenge that you almost need a palpable, actionable thing that one individual can do. And sometimes I feel like, what can we do? It's so hard. It's so difficult. It seems so dark. But the two things I would say is believe in the next generation and verbally share and show your belief. There's the book Love and Respect, as we kind of talked about, Emerson Eggers
great
earlier.
book.
It talks about like the relationship a husband and a wife have, and kind of at the core, and this comes from Ephesians 5 of women, respect your husbands, husbands, love your wives. And it's not to say that men shouldn't respect their wives or women shouldn't love their husband, but it's something that means a lot, it seems like, in the wiring of who we are. And on a play of words, I would say between generations, I kind of feel like something that means so much, and maybe because it's been so lacking from young people towards older generation, if I could flip those two words, it would be honor towards the older generation. I think it's something that we and the young people have done a poor job at, honoring the sacrifices, the work. It's something you even notice in your parents as you become the age they were when they were parenting you, and now you are, and you start to honor them and respect them and see the work and the sacrifice that they did. And then from the older generation, I would say a very important, I think, posture and word would be belief. So it would be honor and belief. One of the most powerful things an older person can do for a young person is just be like, I'm all in. I believe in you. I see this in you, even when they especially don't see it in themselves. And especially in a world where a lot of what you hear from the older generation is negativity, and not even about young people, which there is a lot of that, but about the future in general. Even Christians, the people of hope and the people of faith are often people of doom and gloom and phrases like, oh, I don't know what it's like to grow up in a world like this. This is crazy. It's never been like this. I can't imagine raising kids in this world. And we're like,
Right.
Thanks. We kind of have to. And this is where we have to lead. And I don't think God is freaking out. I don't think he's surprised. I think God has designed not just this generation, but our generations for this moment. And so we've got to be people of faith and have a non-anxious presence. And then second would be go all in for just one young person. Like, you can't change the whole next generation probably, but you could change the life of one. And so Andy Stanley has a quote where he says, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. And that might not be for your whole life, but in a season, if that's a year, maybe that's 2 years, like finding one, and maybe it is 2 or 3 young people where you're like, I see some hunger in them. I see some faithfulness in them. I see humility in them. Or it could be someone who's like, I don't see those things, but I have a heart for them. I feel a prompting and a compassion for them. I want to get them from A to B or A to Z. No matter what it is, it's like, I want to pour gasoline on that fire. And it's huge. I mean, some of the greatest stories we've ever heard have almost always have mentors in them. There's actually a book called the story with Hero with 1,000 Faces. Actually, it's by Joseph Campbell, I believe. Sorry, and Disney totally uses this book when they make their movies. Star Wars, George Lucas said that book was his Yoda whenever making the Star Wars franchise and story.
Interesting.
And so one of the biggest concepts is in these stories, there's the idea of a young person with this strong will to do something great, do something different than what they're growing up in. But they just can't get there. They have this angst for something more. They can't get there. And then something happens. And it's a mentor comes in. This is Luke Skywalker meets Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is Harry Potter meets Hagrid. This is Neo meets Morpheus. We keep seeing the story. Rocky meets Mickey, his coach. And without the mentor, if you take the mentor out of that story, you take the advocate for the young person out of that story, I would say without what's his name? And Frodo's guy, Gandalf. Like if Gandalf, the very beginning of the movie is if Gandalf doesn't show up, there's no Lord of the Rings. There's no trilogy.
True.
If Hagrid doesn't show up, Harry Potter just keeps living in that closet, and it's not a great story.
Poor guy. Yeah.
Story. It's a very sad story. Without Neo and Morpheus showing up, it's just not the stories we know. And so you can't change the whole story, but you can change someone's story. And so finding out who is that God that you call me to go all in on and to advocate for, be a door opener for, put my neck on the line for them, kind of mentor and encourage them, especially when they're discouraged. And that's one of the most powerful things I think you can do.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's really good.
Cheyanne?
I want to speak really directly to my sisters in the faith who are on this journey.
Please.
That's good.
And this thing that has been really loud in my heart and mind lately is feeling really sad at how culture paints us. That as the older we get, the more irrelevant we become. And I really want to push back on that.
Yeah.
I really want to encourage you that your voice is needed. Your call is warranted. The world needs what God has put in you. Out of all the times, out of all the places that God could have put you throughout history and across the world, He chose you here now as you are. And in no other realm of life do we ever think about someone gaining more experience and somehow becoming less valuable. We don't think about that in our workplace. Like we're always very enamored with those who have the 20, 30-year resume, experience, wisdom, hard-fought knowledge, things that you can only gain with that kind of experience across time. And so I just really want to encourage you, be on the lookout for anywhere that the enemy may be attacking your heart and your mind and whispering, maybe even in your own voice, man, I know I'm becoming older and I gotta pull out my readers now. Or, I used to have way more energy than I did. Or, there's a lot of conversation now around Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Is there still room for me? Do I still matter? Do I have anything that anyone wants? It's like, no, of course you do. I really want to empower you to think differently about growing older, to embrace it, that there is so much richness to be gained the older we get, and to stop dreading turning 30. I'm 31, so I had my 30th birthday a couple years ago, and I was so excited. My 20s were beautiful, but your 20s are just onslaught with a ton of change. It's like one major life change after another, right? And it's fun and it's fast, it's furious, and you get to learn a lot and you're growing a lot and you're stretched a lot and you're just figuring it out. And I was so excited to step into my 30s. I was like, man, what a gift. One, to get to be older. I lost a dear friend of mine from my church community group to cancer 4 or 5 years ago. And I regularly think back to her. I'm like, wow, like she did a beautiful job stewarding the life that God gave her. But what a gift it is for me to be able to wake up today and say, Lord, what is it that you would have me do today that would bring you great pleasure? Yeah. We are still in the game. And not only are you in the game, you are essential. Like we don't look at any of those mentor characters across some of our favorite fables and stories and look at them and be like, they're irrelevant. Like, no, if it weren't for them, the story would have ended so differently. The next generation needs desperately what you have to offer. Don't sideline yourself. Don't believe this pervasive lie that is backed by just so much marketing and just, this is the standard for beauty. This is the standard for this. Like, okay, great. But there's so much more to life than that. And I just really want to encourage you, lean all the way in. Like, just put your foot on the gas pedal with margin, but also on the gas pedal. Your time is not up. You matter. What you have matters. Your wisdom and your experience matters. So keep showing up. Do so humbly, but not with false humility either. You're trying to downplay yourself, but show up just as you are, where God has you, scars and all, whether they be emotional scars, physical scars, whatever it may be. Like that, it's proof that you had to go through something really hard. You're still here. You have a story to tell. You have lessons learned. And when you speak them, they carry a different authority than if someone who's never been through that or doesn't have that experience has. It could be the exact same words, the exact same truth, but when you're speaking from a place of experience, it carries a different weight. It carries a different anointing. It carries a different authority. I just really want to encourage, the women out there. Like, don't believe the lie. Don't get caught up in it. I think that's a really sneaky way for the enemy to make us compete with one another. And that's just, we're on the same team. Your win is my win. And we win when we do this thing together. And I need you to do what you were made to do, because I wasn't made to do that. I gotta run in my lane, which means I need you to run in your lane. And I need you to keep doing it over the long haul. So that's what I would share. I'll get off my soapbox now, but.
No, Cheyanne. Oh, girl. That was awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on here, pouring out your wisdom on us. As we wrap up the show, I know people are going to want to follow along with the work that you both are doing. Can you let us know how they can connect with you and follow the work that you do?
Yeah. Luckily for both of us, no one generally has the last name Skeldon. I've never met someone with my last name, and my dad's South African, my mom's Mexican, and it's a unique mix. And so I say that to say, I think, Instagram and social media is Cheyanne Skeldon, Grant Skeldon, Cheyanne with Cheyanne, Skeldon, Skeldon. And then both of our websites get to then be grantskeldon.com, CheyanneSkeldon.com. And then I didn't mention this at the very beginning, but I do work for Think. It was originally Q Ideas, and that's where we do the gatherings for young leaders.
Yes.
And I always want to invite, whether you have kids in the next generation, especially young adults, that's more who we are focusing on, or you have, or you just want to help and invest in the next generation. We do a gathering together in November 8th and 9th, 2024 at least, in the heart of downtown Nashville, called Next Gen Summit. And that's at nextgensummit.com. And that's NXTGEN Summit.com.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on today. We're going to link all that in our show notes. So again, it's a one-stop shop to get you, if you want to follow along or learn more about Next Gen Summit or the work that Cheyanne's doing as well with the LifePlan. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on here and sharing with us. As we close today's conversation, we've explored how leading wisely involves not only embracing our human limitations, but also creating space in our lives for growth. By partnering with God and our community, we can navigate these challenges with grace and clarity. It's through these relationships that we learn to balance our responsibilities, discover our true selves, and to live fully in the freedom of our shared journey. Do you have a different takeaway or a question from today's conversation? If so, I want to invite you to let us know. You can do that by sharing your thoughts on the Instagram post for this episode on our social media, or you can do that in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube right now. Let's continue this dialogue on leading with wisdom. Well, as we wrap up this episode, I want to express our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who plays a role in making the Polish Podcast a reality. The Polish Podcast is made possible in part by the generous support of Coca-Cola Consolidated. Thanks again to Grant and Cheyanne Skeldon for your passion for the next generation and your encouragement to live within the freedom of our human limitations. To our loyal listeners, your unwavering support and engagement drive us to deliver content that resonates and emboldens. Thank you, Polish Network, for creating a nurturing community where women in the workforce can thrive and connect. A big thank you to White Oak Christian Church for their partnership and contributions to the production of these episodes. After all this talk about purpose, community, and leading wisely, it turns out life is pretty straightforward because in the end,
We're all just hearts on sticks.
if you're seeking a supportive community for your faith and work journey, I'd love to encourage you to join us on our social media and our YouTube channel. Stay updated with our latest content by liking, subscribing, and taking a moment to rate and review the Polish Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Your engagement means a lot, and it helps us create content that's meaningful for you. Until next time, this is Jane Doerman signing off. Keep moving forward and stay emboldened.